What drives a person to believe they must drink human blood to survive? In the late 1970s, Sacramento was gripped by fear as a series of brutal murders shocked the community. The perpetrator, Richard Chase, infamously known as the Vampire of Sacramento, his crimes were not just acts of violence but manifestations of a deeply disturbed mind, convinced that drinking human blood was the only way to prevent his own from turning to powder. Tonight we will delve deep into the life of Richard Chase, exploring the terrifying psychology that led him down this path of madness. We'll uncover his early life, the development of his severe psychosis, and the horrific crimes that cemented his place in the annals of criminal history. Join us as we explore the frightening details of how a man's mind can become so twisted that it drives him to commit unspeakable acts. This is the story of Richard Chase, the Vampire of Sacramento. Richard Chase was born in Sacramento, California on May 23, 1950. From an early age, his life was marked by turmoil and instability. Chase grew up in a household fraught with conflict. His parents' volatile marriage and subsequent divorce left him feeling abandoned and neglected. These early experiences created a foundation of emotional instability that would plague him for the rest of his life. As a child, Chase exhibited signs of severe psychological issues. He was often withdrawn and struggled to form meaningful relationships. His behavior became increasingly erratic as he grew older. At a young age, he began showing symptoms of hypochondria, frequently complaining about imaginary ailments. These early signs of mental illness went largely unaddressed, setting the stage for his later descent into madness. During his teenage years, Richard Chase's mental health continued to deteriorate. He started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, which only exacerbated his existing psychological issues. He developed a fascination with blood and began killing and dissecting animals. This disturbing behavior was an early indicator of his violent tendencies and growing obsession with blood. Chase's delusions became more pronounced as he entered adulthood. He developed a fixation on his health, believing that his heart would stop beating or that his blood was turning to powder. These delusions led him to think that consuming blood was the only way to save himself. This belief began his transformation into the infamous Vampire of Sacramento. As Chase's psychosis deepened, his behavior became increasingly erratic and violent. He was hospitalized several times for psychiatric issues, but he often refused treatment. During one hospitalization, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but he was released after a short stay. This lack of sustained medical intervention allowed his condition to worsen unchecked. Chase's delusion that his blood was turning to powder became all-consuming. He believed that the only way to prevent his blood from disappearing was to drink the blood of others. This terrifying belief drove him to commit increasingly violent acts. He began breaking into homes and stealing small animals, drinking their blood in an attempt to stave off his perceived ailment. Richard Chase's criminal activities escalated rapidly. He moved from killing animals to attacking humans. In 1977, he shot and killed his first victim, Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer in a drive-by shooting. This random act of violence was the beginning of a killing spree that would terrify the residents of Sacramento. Chase's methods were gruesome and ritualistic. He would enter homes and attack his victims, drinking their blood and sometimes consuming their organs. His crimes followed a horrifying pattern, each act more brutal than the last. The sheer brutality of his murders earned him the moniker, the Vampire of Sacramento. The murder of Ambrose Griffin marked the start of Richard Chase's reign of terror. Griffin was helping his wife unload groceries when Chase shot him in a seemingly random attack. The senseless nature of the crime shocked the community and baffled law enforcement, who had no leads on the perpetrator. Chase's subsequent murders were even more horrific. In January 1978, he broke into the home of Teresa Wallen, who was 3 months pregnant, and brutally killed her. He drank her blood and mutilated her body, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable horror. Just a few days later, he struck again, killing Evelyn Maroth, her 6-year-old son Jason, her nephew David, and her friend Dan Meredith. The gruesome details of these murders sent shockwaves through Sacramento and cemented Chase's reputation as a monster. The brutal murder of Evelyn Meredith and her family led to a massive manhunt. Law enforcement worked tirelessly to track down the killer. A breakthrough came when they found Chase's fingerprints and shoe prints at the crime scene. His erratic behavior and mental health history made him a prime suspect. He was eventually captured without incident, bringing an end to his killing spree. Richard Chase's trial was a media sensation. The gruesome nature of his crimes and his bizarre behavior in court captivated the public's attention. During the trial, Chase's defense team argued that he was not guilty because of insanity, pointing to his severe psychosis and delusions. However, the prosecution presented a strong case that he knew his actions were wrong. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Chase guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced him to death. Psychologists and criminologists have studied Richard Chase's case extensively. Experts agree that his severe mental illness, including paranoid schizophrenia, and his blood-related delusions played a crucial role in his crimes. His inability to differentiate between reality and his delusions made him a danger to society. Chase's case highlights the importance of early and sustained psychiatric intervention for individuals with severe mental health issues. The case of Richard Chase has had a lasting impact on criminal psychology. It underscored the need for better mental health care and monitoring of individuals with severe psychiatric disorders. The lessons learned from Chase's case have been applied in modern forensic psychology to help prevent similar tragedies. His story continues as a chilling reminder of the potential consequences of untreated mental illness. Richard Chase's life and crimes are a terrifying example of how severe psychosis can lead to unimaginable horrors. From his troubled childhood and early signs of mental illness to his gruesome murders and eventual capture, Chase's story is a chilling journey into the mind of a madman. Reflecting on the complexity and horror of his case, we are reminded of the significance of mental health care and the necessity to address psychological issues before they escalate into violence. We invite you to share your thoughts on Richard Chase's case in the comments below. What do you think could have been done to prevent his descent into madness? If you find this video intriguing, please like it, subscribe to the Phantasmal Eternity channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. In our next video, we'll explore another spine-chilling story from the annals of criminal history. Stay tuned for more psychological horror and true crime stories that will keep you on the brim of your seat.